Tonight, I've gathered 2 terrifying text message horror stories that will send shivers down your spine and keep you up all night. So grab your favorite snack and turn off the lights, because things are about to get spooky. It was just another ordinary day for Sarah. She was sitting in her bedroom, scrolling through social media on her phone, when a new message popped up from an unknown number.
Who could this be?
Sarah wondered before clicking on the message. It was a simple text.
Hello, Sarah.
Sarah stared at the message for a moment, feeling a little creeped out. She decided to ignore it and went back to scrolling through her phone, hoping that it was just a wrong number. But then, the messages continued to come in. Each one was more strange and unsettling than the last. The sender seemed to know things about Sarah that they shouldn't, personal information that she had never shared with anyone. They would reference things that she had done or said in private, or mention things that she had only thought about. The messages were starting to make Sarah feel incredibly uneasy. At first, Sarah assumed that it was just a prank from one of her friends. But as the messages continued, she began to feel more and more like she was being watched. It felt like someone was always there, lurking just out of sight and watching her every move. Sarah's heart raced as she tried to come up with a logical explanation for the messages. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. She knew that she needed to get to the bottom of this before it was too late. Determined to find out who was behind the mysterious messages, Sarah decided to do some investigating of her own. She started by doing a reverse phone number search, hoping to find out who the sender was. But the search turned up nothing, leaving Sarah even more frustrated and frightened. Undeterred, Sarah turned to her friends for help. She showed them the messages and asked if they knew anything about the unknown number, but none of them recognized it, and they were just as perplexed as Sarah was. As the days went by, the messages continued to pour in. They were becoming more and more frequent and more disturbing by the minute. The sender seemed to be watching Sarah's every move, and Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. One night, Sarah heard a strange noise coming from outside her window. She cautiously peered outside, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. But when she turned back to her phone, she saw that a new message had appeared. It read, "You can't escape me, Sarah. I'm always watching." Terrified, Sarah realized that the sender was now threatening her directly. She knew that she needed to take action before things got even worse. With no other options left, Sarah decided to go to the police. She showed them the messages and explained the situation, hoping that they would be able to track down the sender and put a stop to the harassment. But when the police ran a trace on the number, they came up empty-handed. The sender had used a burner phone and had been careful to cover their tracks. Sarah was devastated. It felt like there was nowhere to turn and nobody who could help her. She was trapped in a nightmare that she couldn't escape from. As the messages continued to flood in, Sarah became increasingly paranoid. She started to question everyone in her life, wondering if they could be the mysterious sender. She couldn't trust anyone, not even her closest friends and family. One day, Sarah received a message that was different from all the rest. It was a photo of her taken from behind while she was out shopping. The sender had been following her. Sarah's heart raced as she stared at the photo. She felt like she was being watched all the time, and the thought of someone following her was too much to bear. It was then that Sarah remembered something that she had tried to forget. A few years ago, she had broken up with a boyfriend who had become obsessed with her. He would follow her, send her endless messages, and even show up unannounced at her apartment. Sarah realized that she had never changed her phone number after the breakup, and that her ex-boyfriend could still have access to it. She couldn't believe that she had been so stupid. Sarah immediately called her ex, demanding that he stop sending her messages. But when he answered the phone, he sounded genuinely surprised. He claimed that he hadn't been sending her any messages, and that he had no idea what she was talking about. Sarah was torn. She didn't know who to believe, but the messages continued to come in, and Sarah knew that she had to do something before it was too late. Desperate for answers, Sarah turned to the internet. She searched for anything that could help her understand what was happening to her, and that's when she came across a story that chilled her to the bone. It was a story about a man who had died, but continued to send messages from beyond the grave. Sarah realized that the sender of her messages could be something much more sinister than just an ex-boyfriend. Sarah couldn't believe what she had discovered. The thought of the messages coming from beyond the grave sent shivers down her spine. She tried to shake off the feeling, telling herself that it was just a coincidence. But the messages continued, and they seemed to be getting more intense. They were no longer just random words and phrases, but rather detailed descriptions of Sarah's daily routine. It was as if someone was watching her every move. One day, Sarah received a message that made her blood run cold. It was a photo of her sleeping, taken from a vantage point that could only have been from inside her bedroom. Sarah frantically searched her apartment, but found nothing out of the ordinary. The realization hit her like a ton of bricks. She was not alone in her apartment. There was an unseen force watching her, and she had no idea how to stop it. Sarah tried to ignore the messages, but they were relentless. She couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and couldn't focus on anything other than the constant stream of messages. As the days turned into weeks, Sarah's mental state deteriorated. She was constantly on edge, afraid that the unseen force was going to strike at any moment. Then, one day, Sarah received a message that changed everything. It was a video of her in the shower, taken from a camera hidden in the bathroom. Sarah felt violated and powerless. She knew that she had to do something to stop the unseen force. Sarah started to research ways to protect herself from malevolent spirits. She read about protective amulets, spells, and rituals that could ward off evil. She tried them all, but nothing seemed to work. It was then that Sarah remembered something that her grandmother had told her when she was a child. Her grandmother had been a psychic and had always believed that there was a world beyond our own, inhabited by spirits and ghosts. Sarah reached out to a psychic, hoping that they could help her make contact with the unseen force. The psychic agreed to help, and Sarah eagerly awaited their next meeting, hoping that they would finally be able to put an end to the nightmare that had taken over her life. Sarah's meeting with the psychic was scheduled for a Saturday evening. She spent the day preparing for the encounter, making sure to follow all of the psychic's instructions. As the sun began to set, Sarah made her way to the psychic's office. The building was old and run down, with peeling paint and broken windows. Sarah hesitated for a moment, wondering if she was making a mistake, but she knew that she had no other choice. The psychic's office was dimly lit, with candles flickering on every surface. The air was thick with the scent of incense, and the sound of chanting filled the room. Sarah was greeted by the psychic, a small, elderly woman with a gentle smile. The psychic asked Sarah to sit down and then began to explain the process. She said that she would try to make contact with the unseen force and that Sarah should be prepared for anything. Sarah nodded, trying to keep her nerves under control. The psychic closed her eyes and began to chant. The room grew quiet, and Sarah could feel her heart racing in her chest. Suddenly, the psychic's eyes snapped open and she gasped.
The spirit is strong,
She said, her voice barely above a whisper.
It's been watching you for a long time.
Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She had always been skeptical of the paranormal, but now, faced with the reality of a malevolent spirit, she was terrified. The psychic continued to chant, her voice growing louder and more urgent. Suddenly, the candles on the table flickered and went out. Sarah screamed, but the psychic kept chanting. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, the chanting stopped.
The spirit has been appeased.
She said, her voice shaking.
It has agreed to leave you alone.
Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her. She couldn't believe that it was over. The psychic instructed Sarah to light a candle and leave it burning for 3 days as a way to ensure that the spirit would not return. Sarah left the psychic's office feeling drained but grateful. She knew that she would never forget the experience and that it had changed her in ways that she couldn't even begin to understand. Weeks had passed since Sarah's encounter with the malevolent spirit. She had followed the psychic's instructions, leaving a candle burning for 3 days straight, and had not experienced any more strange occurrences. She tried to put the experience behind her, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. One day, as Sarah was walking home from work, she noticed a man staring at her from across the street. He was tall and thin, with dark hair and piercing blue eyes. Sarah couldn't place where she had seen him before, but she felt a strange sense of familiarity. As she crossed the street, the man approached her.
Excuse me,
He said, his voice deep and smooth.
I couldn't help but notice that you seem familiar. Have we met before?
Sarah shook her head, feeling a sudden sense of unease.
No, I don't think so.
She said, taking a step back. The man smiled, but there was something unsettling about it.
Well, it's good to see you again, Sarah.
He said.
I'm sorry I couldn't help you before.
Sarah's heart began to race. How did this man know her name? And what did he mean by not being able to help her before? Before she could say anything, the man turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Sarah stood frozen on the sidewalk, unsure of what to do. She felt like she was being watched, like there was something sinister lurking just out of sight. As she made her way home, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that the encounter with the malevolent spirit had only been the beginning. She didn't know what was coming next, but she knew that she had to be ready. Emily had always dreamed of escaping the city and moving to a small town where she could start fresh. She had finally found the perfect place in Millfield, a quaint town nestled in the hills. As she unpacked her belongings in her new home, she couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and anticipation for the new adventure that awaited her. But as the sun began to set, Emily started to feel uneasy. She couldn't quite put her finger on what was bothering her, but something just felt off. The town was eerily quiet, with only the occasional car passing by. She couldn't see any people around, only the silhouette of the new cell phone tower that glimmered in the fading light. Emily went inside to her new home, eager to explore the house and make it her own. As she walked around the empty rooms, she couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. Everything seemed too quiet, too still. And then she heard it, a faint humming sound coming from outside. Curious, Emily followed the sound to the window and looked outside. She saw the new cell phone tower that had been erected nearby, its lights blinking rhythmically. She shrugged it off and continued exploring her new home. But the humming sound persisted. It was like a constant, low-level buzz that she couldn't shake. As the night grew darker, Emily started to feel more and more anxious. She tried to distract herself by unpacking her belongings and arranging her furniture, but the humming sound continued to bother her. She decided to take a break and check her new phone. To her surprise, the phone was already pre-installed with various apps she had never heard of, including a messaging app called Ghost Chat. The app had no instructions or descriptions, just a simple interface with a blank white screen. Emily felt a chill down her spine as she opened the app, wondering who had installed it on her phone and what it was for. She decided to test the app out and sent a message to the only contact on the app, a mysterious number that seemed to have already been saved in the app. The message read, "Is anyone there?" To Emily's surprise, she received a response almost immediately. The message was cryptic and vague, but Emily felt a sense of dread as she read it. It hinted at something sinister, something that was lurking in the shadows. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, that the new phone tower was somehow responsible for the strange happenings in the town. Emily knew that she needed to investigate further. She resolved to uncover the truth behind the eerie humming sound. the mysterious messaging app, and the new cell phone tower that seemed to be at the center of it all. The next morning, Emily woke up early and decided to take a walk around town. She wanted to get a better sense of her surroundings and see if she could find any clues that would help her uncover the truth behind the strange happenings from the previous night. As she walked, she noticed that the town was even quieter in the daylight than it had been at night. The streets were almost empty, with only a few people going about their business. Emily felt like an outsider in this town. Like everyone was watching her every move. She decided to head to the town center, hoping to find some information about the new cell phone tower that had been erected. As she walked, she noticed that the humming sound was louder now, almost overwhelming. It was like a constant buzz in her ears that she couldn't escape. When she arrived at the town center, she saw that there was a small gathering of people around the town notice board. She approached them, hoping to join the conversation and learn more about the town's recent developments. As she listened to their conversation, she heard the townspeople discussing the new cell phone tower. They were worried about the impact it might have on the town's natural environment, and some of them were concerned that it might be causing health problems. Emily felt a sense of relief. At least she wasn't the only one who was suspicious of the new cell phone tower. She decided to join in the conversation and asked if anyone had noticed any strange happenings around the tower. But to her surprise, the townspeople looked at her like she was crazy. "No, we haven't noticed anything like that." One of them said, "Why do you ask?" Emily didn't know how to explain the strange humming sound or the mysterious messaging app. She decided to change the subject and asked if there were any local shops or businesses that she should check out. One of the townspeople recommended a small antique store that was located on the outskirts of town. They said that the owner was an expert in local history and might be able to shed some light on the town's recent developments. Emily decided to take their advice and headed to the antique store. As she walked, the humming sound grew louder and louder, like it was trying to drown out her thoughts. When she arrived at the store, she saw that it was closed. But as she was about to turn and leave, she noticed a small sign on the door that read, "Open by appointment only." Emily decided to call the number on the sign and see if she could make an appointment. To her surprise, the person who answered the phone was the same mysterious number from the Ghost Chat app. Emily felt a chill down her spine as she realized that the app and the cell phone tower were somehow connected. The person on the other end of the line told her that they would meet her at the store in half an hour. Emily felt a mixture of fear and curiosity as she waited for their arrival. Wondering what secrets the antique store owner might be hiding, Emily waited nervously outside the antique store, wondering who would show up to meet her. She still couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her, and the humming sound from the cell phone tower was getting louder by the minute. After a few minutes, a tall, thin man with a long beard appeared from around the corner. He was wearing a tweed jacket and a pair of wire-rimmed glasses, and he looked like he had just stepped out of a different era. "Hello, Emily," he said, extending his hand. "I'm the owner of this store. Please, come in." Emily followed the man inside, taking in the rows of antiques and oddities that lined the shelves. There were old books, ancient artifacts, and even a few dusty pieces of technology that looked like they belonged in a museum. The man led her to a back room, where he motioned for her to take a seat at a small table. He poured her a cup of tea and sat down across from her. "Now, what brings you to my humble shop?" he asked. Emily hesitated for a moment, wondering how much she should reveal, but the man seemed friendly enough, and she decided to tell him everything. "I've been experiencing some strange things with my cell phone," she said. "I think it might have something to do with the new cell phone tower in town." The man's eyes widened in surprise. "You're not the first person to come to me with concerns about that tower," he said. "There are some who believe that it's not just a cell phone tower, but something much more sinister." "What do you mean?" Emily asked. The man leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "There are rumors that the tower is a gateway to another realm," he said. "That it's been attracting all sorts of supernatural activity to this town. And the more people use their cell phones, the stronger that connection becomes. Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. It was one thing to suspect that something was off about the tower, but to hear someone else confirm her fears was another thing entirely. "What can we do?" she asked. The man looked at her thoughtfully for a moment. "There's an old legend in this town," he said, "about a device that was created by the town's founder, a man named Caleb. It was said to have the power to connect this world to the next, and it was hidden away for centuries. But now, with the tower's influence growing stronger, it's possible that the device has been awakened." "What device?" Emily asked. The man stood up and walked to a nearby shelf. He picked up a small silver device that looked like a cross between a phone and a compass. "This is the device," he said. "It's called the Caleb compass, and if what I suspect is true, then it might be the key to stopping the tower's influence once and for all." Emily stared at the strange device in the antique store owner's hand. It looked like nothing she had ever seen before, with a sleek silver design and a small digital display on the front. "What does it do?" she asked. The store owner smiled. "It's called the Caleb compass," he said. "Legend has it that it was created by the town's founder, Caleb, to connect this world to the next. It's said to have the power to open a portal between our world and the realm of the dead." Emily's heart raced as she listened to him speak. It all sounded so unbelievable, but given the strange occurrences she had experienced since the cell phone tower went up, she couldn't completely dismiss the possibility. "So how can we use it to stop the tower's influence?" she asked. The store owner sat down across from her and placed the Caleb compass on the table. "Well, first we need to figure out how to use it," he said. "The device has been hidden away for centuries, and there's no record of how to activate it. But I have a theory." He picked up the device and turned it over in his hands. "I believe that the compass is activated by a specific frequency," he said, "one that is unique to this town and the surrounding area. If we can find that frequency, we might be able to unlock the compass's power and use it to close the portal to the other realm." Emily felt a surge of hope as she listened to him. It was a long shot, but it was better than doing nothing. "How do we find the frequency?" she asked. The store owner stood up and walked to a nearby bookshelf. He ran his fingers along the spines of the books until he found what he was looking for. "I have a theory," he said, pulling a thick leather-bound tome from the shelf. "There's an old book in my collection that I believe contains the information we need. It's called the Book of Frequencies, and it's said to hold the key to unlocking the power of the Caleb compass." He handed the book to Emily, who took it with trembling hands. The cover was made of thick, cracked leather, and the pages inside were yellowed with age. "We don't have much time," the store owner said. "The tower's influence is growing stronger by the day. We need to find the frequency and activate the compass before it's too late." Emily nodded, determination coursing through her veins. "I'll do whatever it takes," she said. "I have to stop this." The store owner smiled at her. "I knew I could count on you," he said. "Let's get started." Emily and the antique store owner stood outside the abandoned church, the Caleb compass in hand. They had spent days poring over the Book of Frequencies, searching for the unique frequency that would activate the device and close the portal to the other realm. As they approached the entrance to the church, Emily could feel a sense of foreboding settling over her. She knew that whatever lay ahead would not be easy. The antique store owner placed a hand on her shoulder, giving her a reassuring smile. "Don't worry," he said. "We've come this far. We can do this." Together, they stepped inside the church, the air thick with the scent of decay and must. They made their way to the altar, where the cell phone tower loomed like a dark shadow. Emily could feel the tower's influence pulsing through the room, a palpable force that threatened to overwhelm her. But she refused to back down. She had come too far to let the tower win. She held out the Caleb compass, the digital display flickering to life. As she searched for the correct frequency, she felt a cold wind blow through the church, rustling the pages of the Book of Frequencies. Finally, she found it. the frequency that would unlock the Caleb Compass's power and close the portal to the other realm. She closed her eyes, focusing all her energy on the device in her hand. She could feel the power building, crackling through her veins like electricity. And then, with a burst of light, the portal began to close. The tower's influence faded away, leaving behind only the faint hum of electricity. Emily opened her eyes, feeling as if a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "It's done," she said, turning to the antique store owner. He smiled at her, relief written all over his face. "We did it," he said. As they stepped out of the church, Emily felt a sense of peace settle over her. The town was no longer haunted by the tower's influence, and she knew that they had saved countless lives by closing the portal to the other realm. But as she walked away from the church, she couldn't help but wonder what other secrets lay buried beneath the surface of the town, and whether there would be more battles to come. For now, though, she was content to bask in the glow of victory, knowing that she had done her part to protect her town and the people she loved.